Our story of the video is titled The Match Game from Season 1, Episode 18, and it originally aired on April 15th, 1989. Our story starts off with two teens, Jody and Paul, standing outside of a boarded-up Victorian mansion. Jody says the place is haunted and excitedly tells Paul to join her, but he's immediately spooked by the mere sight of the old house and seems to be frozen in his tracks. Jody finds a hammer hidden by their friend Matthew. Paul, wide-eyed, asks if Jody's sure that the others won't mind him tagging along for the night. She says everyone will be fine with it. She says they all think he's a good dude, even calling him by the nickname Paul the Dreamer, because he always seems bored and spaced out. Jody, for some reason, says it's an appealing quality. Paul, using his trademark spaciness, walks to the edge of the porch to look longingly at nothing, all while the wind seemingly whispers his name. Just when Spacey Sprocket begins to think that it's strange, he's suddenly jump-scared by Jody, who says they need to get going, saying she doesn't want the neighbors to get suspicious. Paul stops her and asks who used to live in the old manor, back before it was run down and supposedly haunted. Jody casually says it was the man who built the house. Oh, and he just opted out at the nearby pond. But she also casually says that it helps with the mood of the game they play, remarking that last time she ended up tossing and turning all night. Paul stares off into space again while Jody leaves. She even has to yell up at him to stop being a spacey slapnut and leave before they're late. He runs down the steps to join her, only to turn back and stare at the house again. It's fair to say at this point that Paul likely needs Adderall to tie his shoes each morning. Later that night, Beverly and Matthew are already inside the house, getting things ready for their game. Beverly says she's feeling uneasy, and Matt says that she's like this every time they play, but they always end up fine. Meaning, in horror movie speak, this is the time everything's gonna go wrong and they're gonna be the exact opposite of just fine. Beverly says that Jody's friend gives her the creeps. The camera pans over to show Paul gripping the stair railing a bit too sensually. Jody again has to snap him out of his attention deficit, asking him if he's okay. He shakes his head and says he's fine before walking off. Some time passes, and Matt reveals some matches and begins explaining the game, saying that the first person strikes a match and begins telling a horror story. When the match burns out, the next person strikes a match and picks up the story where the last person left off. Paul looks confused, though it's self-explanatory, and Jody has to simplify it even further, saying that the story isn't fixed and is made up as they go along. Beverly is about to strike a match and start the game when Matt steals the box from her. Doing his best creepy story voice, he says that he'll be the one who starts. He giggles as he strikes the first match. He starts the story of Herbert, the house's previous owner, and about how he went out to the middle of the pond one day and voluntarily stopped swimming. Again, I have to jump around what he actually did because YouTube sucks. Matt yells out Herbert's name, and slowly some undead fingers break the surface of the murky pond. He makes some Resident Evil zombie groans as he begins making squishy footsteps toward his house. Matt's match burns out, and Beverly strikes hers, continuing the story. She says the reason he cannonballed himself into the lake was because of unrequited love from a woman across town named Ethel Swartz. Matt argues that it's meant to be a scary story, not a romance novel. Beverly snorts back that it's her turn and she'll say what she wants. Jody strikes the next match and continues the made-up tale, saying that the two did love each other and saw each other on the side until people from town started to notice. Ethel's husband caught wind of the affair and locked her in the attic of the old manor, then baited and waited for Herbert by the pond, where they had a big fight. Paul strikes his match. He says that Herbert was the bigger man and bested Ethel's husband in the fight, killing him. He buried the body in a shallow, unmarked grave and then took off on horseback in the pouring rain to reunite with Ethel. Everyone looks down to see the match, and Paul's hand isn't burning out, so he enthusiastically continues the tale, saying that Herbert was getting whipped in the face and chest by trees and bushes. The rain seems to grow in intensity with every gallop from the horse. Herbert can't believe how dark it suddenly got, but he sees the light coming from the attic in the distance, her silhouette visible from the window. Suddenly there's a crash of thunder and lightning. It spooks the horse and tosses Herbert into sharp farming equipment, 3 sharp prongs gouging his face. He continues, saying that Herbert begins trying to stumble and drag himself to the house, He's so close that he can hear the clock striking the midnight hour. The large clock in the house chimes as Paul's match blows out. Beverly, skeptical how the weird new kid could time the lightning crash and clock chiming so perfectly, asks which one of them messed with the clock, saying that it's been stuck on the same time for years, but now suddenly, tonight of all nights, it hits midnight on the dot. Matt says that nobody messed with anything and that maybe it was mass hypnosis, while playfully dangling something in front of her face. She smacks it away, and Jody says maybe the spring was stuck and the thunderclap shook it loose, just as another thunderclap vibrates the house. Paul looks on like Edward Scissorhands needing to pee. Meanwhile, the slimy Herbert is slowly grunting his way to the house. Beverly, spooked out, demands that Matt take her home. He agrees but says it isn't just about them, saying that it should come to a vote. Matt points at Jody, asking her opinion. She just snuggles the autistic kid, and Paul says that they started the story. They should at least finish it. They all sit back in a circle, and Matt strikes a match to continue the story. He starts by saying that Herbert slowly pulled himself free from the sharp farm equipment and began stumbling to the house. But his match goes out before anything is really added. Beverly strikes the next match and continues, saying when Herbert finally reached home, bloody and battered, he collapsed in the doorway. He was near death. A thunderclap spooks her into blowing out the match. Jody strikes the next and continues, saying that Herbert survived but was scarred and horrifying to look at. Even Ethel, the woman he loved, could hardly stand to glance in his direction. Soon after, she left him for another man. Jody's match burns out, and Paul strikes a match and continues, saying that each day he grew meaner, feeling more and more slighted. His constant grimacing and scowling only caused his face to heal improperly, causing him to look more and more disfigured. Pretty soon, Herbert was unable to even stomach looking at himself in the mirror. He tore all the mirrors from the walls and stored them in an upstairs bedroom just so he didn't have to see his own reflection anymore. After years of heartbreak, guilt, and loneliness, Herbert opted to take a final swim in the nearby pond. Matt strikes the next match, saying that Herbert's body might have died, but his hatred lived on, saying that it's nights like these where people enter his home uninvited and begin telling stories about him, that he returns home. Beverly is afraid, so Jody takes her match and strikes it, continuing the story, saying that you can see his blood in the house on nights like tonight, and that if you see Herbert himself, you should run and not look back. Paul strikes a match. He says that looking back isn't the only thing. If you look Herbert in the eyes, the boiling hatred inside will rip your soul from your body. Just then, Herbert's ghoulish form reaches the first steps of the manor. Paul continues, saying that he's up the steps and past the gate, and now he's not only at the door, but he knows they're inside. Beverly, scared, screams at Paul to stop telling the story, saying she hears someone outside. Matt says it's just a story and goes to look out the window. He turns back and says there's nobody outside, only for the slime-covered figure of Herbert to come crashing through the window. He and Matt have a very one-sided fight. Matt tries to punch Herbert in the breadbasket, but finds out it's a soup bowl instead. The undead Herbert grabs him by the jaw and effortlessly lifts him into the air before giving him an impromptu neck adjustment. He sees Paul run up the stairs and menacingly follows, stepping over his new chiropractic patient. The three find a bedroom, which almost appears like the room of mirrors from their story. Paul walks over and pulls the sheet off the nearest object, revealing that to be the case. Beverly removes the next sheet and begins to cry, realizing that the story they all felt compelled to continue telling was, in fact, real. They try to comfort her, but she screams like Clark Griswold in the third act of a vacation movie.
Don't touch!
They back away, and since this is a horror movie, Beverly is attacked, getting a cranial adjustment from Dr. Herbert. So relaxing. After which Herbert has the gook on his hands, but to be fair, I'm not sure if that's undead gook or Beverly gook. After playing with the slimy remains in his hand, Herbert notices himself in the mirror. Paul and Jody notice the sight of himself makes him grimace and back out of the room. They try to barricade the door and Herbert retrieves the fire poker. Jody asks Paul how he knew about the room they're in. He says that he didn't, that he made everything up. Jody says there's something special about him, something that made his story come true, and that they have to finish the story to save themselves. Just then, Herbert bursts into the room, swinging the fireplace poker and breaking the mirrors one by one. Jody lights a match and begins telling the story where they left off. saying that the undead man lingers closer as the raging storm outside grew more and more intense. Paul strikes one and says that something outside lured him to the window, and since Paul isn't a writer, just says that a branch breaks through the window, impaling the undead Herbert. Herbert rips out Paul's sad excuse for a plot development, and Paul, thinking on his feet, says that it's morning and Herbert must return to the pond. The undead creature looks at Paul and is seemingly thinking just like we are, that Paul really dropped the ball in the fourth act, and disappears from secondhand embarrassment. Paul and Jody leave the house huddled together, surely having to come up with a fake story and alibi, since two of their friends are going to be missing and later found dead, and having a broken neck and liquefied skull ain't exactly normal ways to go. They walk down the steps, surely to be wrongly arrested for murder at a later date, as the screen fades to black. But when it comes to the match game, it is widely considered one of the standout stories of the series. The episode was written by David Chaskin and Christopher Orville and directed by Michael Brandon. Horror fans will recognize Ashley Lawrence, who plays Jody. She's best known as Kirsty Cotton from the first two Hellraiser films. The story also stars Tori Spelling, just a year away from her breakout role on Beverly Hills 90210. Tom Woodruff Jr. plays the undead monster Herbert. He also played the xenomorph in Alien 3. He and legendary makeup artist Dick Smith, best known for his groundbreaking work on The Exorcist, served as special effects experts on this episode. That practical makeup helped make the rotting zombie look genuinely unsettling. It's the kind of practical effect work that still stands out today. Woodruff Jr. commented that being in the full suit of the undead creature felt like walking around in goopy paste all day. The amount of time it took to get into the makeup for the monster is contested. Some sources say 4 hours, others 6 or more. Woodruff Jr. even needed someone to feed him and give him water due to the messy, gooey process. When it originally aired, the episode stood out as a creepy, atmospheric haunted house story with supernatural stakes. And that's still how viewers tend to remember it. Fans often praise the blend of tension and horror in the Victorian mansion setting, and many reviewers highlight it as one of the best episodes of the entire series. Even decades later, the match game has remained a favorite among horror anthology fans. It's one of the episodes most commonly recommended when people talk about why Monsters is worth watching. It's a perfect example of how late 80s genre TV could push boundaries with mood, practical effects, and storytelling. Personally, I love that most of the horror comes from atmosphere. None of the stories the teens tell are actually shown on screen. It's all build-up. Even Herbert, the undead monster, is only on screen for a total of less than 6 minutes. All the tension comes from the spooky tales leading up to his appearance. Overall, this is my favorite episode of the series so far. That's all I have for you on this one. I want to thank everyone for watching, and a special thank you to all our channel members. Have a great week, take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one.